Hello friends, this side Rahul Magan here is the Chief Executive Officer of Treasury Consulting LLP, and today we would be covering a dedicated video about an option strategy which is covered call strategy. Unfortunately, when we talk about with majority of the people and we ask a question that what are the two type of option contracts, 99.99% the answer which you people get is that it is either call option and put option. No, that is incorrectly wrong. That is 100% wrong answer, because the two kind of option contracts are deliverable option and non-deliverable option. Now deliverable option are those options whereby one party will deliver his currency and another party will deliver his currency, and the net settlement would put in the P&L. There is no grossing which would happen, right? There is no netting which would happen. On the other hand, in a non-deliverable forward contract, there is only netting which would happen. So you will deliver nothing, he will receive nothing, only the netting would happen. Non-deliverable options are generally used in case of fair value hedging. Take an example, when I used to be the corporate treasurer for an American company, we used to take a non-deliverable forward contract. Similarly, we would have a non-deliverable option also. So non-deliverable OIS also, non-deliverable swaps also. So non-deliverable can be taken in any of the ways. So it is not like that, you can only take non-deliverable in that format. Now here we would be taking an example of a deliverable strategy, which is covered call strategy. Now covered call is nothing but when one side you have a sell call and another side you are owing the stock. So take an example of any company. Take an example of Goldman Sachs as a bank. So what would happen, one side you would have a sell call of Goldman Sachs, another side you are owing the stock of the Goldman Sachs which is trading in the Nasdaq, right? Now covered call, this is the only definition of the covered call we have in the books. Like one side you would have the sell call and another side you would be having an option contract, the position in the stock itself. But covered call is relatively not as easy as what you are getting. Covered call, basically it's a tree and you need to decide where you want it to go, and here is the tree. So these are the two legs. First of all, it is up to a trader, because strike price is something at which you are taking an option contract, and if you ask 100 people, then 100 people would have 100 different answers of a strike price. In my personal view, covered call should be taken at parity. The ideal strike price for a covered call should be parity, option parity, but I cannot force anybody. This is my personal opinion that it should have been taken at parity. So take an example. The parity of an option contract is nothing but when the fair value of an option is equals to the intrinsic value. So what do you mean by fair value of an option? The option fair value is sum of time value plus intrinsic value, which is time value plus intrinsic value, right? Time value is also known as extrinsic value. So the fair value in an option contract is intrinsic value plus extrinsic value. When extrinsic value is equals to 0, then fair value is equals to intrinsic value, and this is known as option parity. In my personal situation, the strike price of the option should be parity, but I cannot force anybody then how they are going. This is how the tree would be. So we always recommend that the strike price of an option contract should be at parity, while the stock would be divided into two parts, while we have another side stock which we'll talk later. This sell call would depend upon the option principle of moneyness. We already had a lot of videos about principle of moneyness, that how exactly the principle of money net trade and how the principle of money net goes. But in a nutshell, that this is how principle of moneyness, which is in the money, at the money and out of the money. We are not here discussing the formula, because in the next video we would be discussing about a relevant formula about in the money, at the money and out of the money. Although we already have a lot of videos in that regards, right? In the money would further be categorized at either in the money or deep in the money. At the same time, out of the money can either be categorized at out of the money and deep out of the money. They will further categorize at with and without composite implied walls. This would further with and without composite implied wall. Now we know that what is implied wall. Implied wall is nothing but the realized wall plus the view, and realized wall is nothing but the historical wall plus minus outliers. So first you would have an historical wall, then you would have a realized wall, and then you would be having an implied wall. So take an example. Suppose the Goldman Sachs historical wall is 10%. Then the realized volatility is historical volatility minus outliers. Assuming the outliers is 3%, assuming, so the total stands 7%. Implied vol is realized vol plus minus view. Plus when you're expecting that it to depreciate, minus when you're expecting that it to appreciate. So this is 7% plus minus, assuming I'm expecting Goldman Sachs to depreciate further. So sorry, depreciate further by 5%. So this plus 5%, sorry, appreciate by 5%. So that is going to be 12%. So I'm going to take the 12%. This is implied vol, but we have one thing which is known as composite implied vol. Composite implied vol means that when you are not dealing a single option, when you are dealing in a strategy, example, range forward, seagull, straddle, bull spread, bear spread, put spread, bear put spread, bull put spread, and there are digital spread, knockout, knockout puts, knockout calls, and number of ways. When you are dealing with that strategy, then the composite implied vols will come into action. Here composite implied vol might not come into action because we are talking about only a single strategy, which is covered call. But practically speaking, composite vols will come into the action. Now there is one more principle which we have linked with the covered call, which is that in the money covered calls would always act as a defensive, while out of the money covered call would always act as an aggressive covered call. We also should not forget that. The meaning of the sell call is you are obliged to deliver. Buy call means right to buy. Sell call is the other party, which means obliged to deliver. So the meaning of the sell call means obliged to deliver. So the principle of moneyness do not depends upon you. The right of the principle of the moneyness is depends upon a people who is on the other side of the game, the man who is holding the buy call. But at the same time, if you are taking a covered call position and you do not understand how exactly this would go, what is the impact of the principle of moneyness, then you are entering into a big society. So it is always advisable that you should understand the principle of moneyness very carefully, and while understanding the principle of moneyness, you should take a position where do you see that principle of moneyness is going in your favor. Example, if you are a defensive person, then out of the money is a suicide. But if you are an aggressive person, then in the money option is for suicide. And at the same time, never forget that the strike rate for sell call should always be parity. But at the same time, the strike rate is not in your hand. But provided if you are aware about the strike rate, in the exchange traded, in a OTC market, that is not in your hand. But in an exchange traded covered call, that is in your hand. You can have a parity as well. This is our purpose of a little introduction about a structure called covered call. In our next video, we would be talking about how exactly to trade the covered call and what are the different scenarios which we have in the covered call. We, Treasury Consulting LLP, are creating a fixed income platform. That fixed income platform is almost done. In the first week of November, we are launching it. That would cover one dedicated desk of option valuation and a lot of other valuation which would happen. We have huge amount of training programs which we are conducting as far as the treasury and other risk management structures are concerned. In case you have any requirement, you know my number. Our website www.treasuryconsulting.in. My mobile is 9899242978, while my Skype ID is Rahul5327. My email is rahul.magan@treasuryconsulting.in. Thank you very much and have a wonderful time ahead.